Tottenham have been blessed with some incredible talent over the last 25 years or so. Since the Premier League began, there have been some phenomenal players at the club. Unfortunately, that's never really translated into silverware and major trophies, but boy have we been blessed with some excellent football players at the club. Now, I know we all miss Tottenham during the international breaks, so why not take this time to put together Tottenham's all-time best Premier League team. I've got it here sitting in front of me, and let me tell you now, it is something special. The things I would do to watch this team play together and watch some of these players play with players that they never really got the opportunity to. Whew. Boy, that would be a sight to behold. Of course, this is all subject to my opinion, so if you have different views to me, please let me know down in the comments. What is your Tottenham all-time combined Premier League 11? There are some players that I'm sure I will miss that people will want to include, so make sure you let me know. Like the video while you're down there and subscribe to the channel if you are new, and let's get straight into it. Now, in goal, I actually think it's a pretty easy decision. I think Hugo Lloris has to go in on his day, probably one of the best shot stoppers in Premier League history and perhaps across Europe. Of course, we know that he gave a lot of time to the club during his career, 11 seasons in fact. Now, of course, if you are going beyond the Premier League, and if you're going back before that, most people would probably have Pat Jennings in goal. But because we're doing all-time Premier League 11, we are going to go to Hugo Lloris. He saved us so many points over the years, and just an incredible servant to the club. Pulled off some fantastic diving saves and got us out of some real tricky spots. Stuck with us through thick and thin as well, through the good and the bad during his 11 seasons at the club, and I think is more than deserving for a place in Tottenham's combined Premier League 11. Right back's a little bit of a tricky one. I know a lot of people out there will probably say perhaps Stephen Carr should go at right back, who again spent 11 seasons at the club, was a brilliant servant to Tottenham, but I don't know if I'm being a little bit biased because I didn't watch him as much as some of the more modern right backs, and Spurs weren't necessarily a very good team when Stephen Carr was at the club, but I've put Kyle Walker in at right back. Now, we know that Walker was part of that Pochettino team and that Pochettino era that went so close to winning the Premier League, and he was just electric. The pace, the power, scored a couple of screamers from quite far out as well. For me, Kyle Walker remains one of the Premier League's best right backs since it started in 1992, and him going on to City and winning everything there is to win is an indication of how good he is, albeit in a super team under a super manager. But, you know, for Tottenham, I think he was also sensational. Obviously built a name for himself at the club, and I was really sad to see him go. So I'm going to go for Kyle Walker over Stephen Carr in this one. Tottenham have been blessed with some absolutely incredible centre-backs over the last 25-30 years. So it's a really difficult decision narrowing it down to just two for our all-time combined 11. But in one of the slots, I think we all know what's coming. It has to be Ledley King. Without his injury problems, he would have undoubtedly been the best or one of the best centre-backs in Europe, would have played for England so many more times. He was just phenomenal. And I think to this day, he remains underrated because he had that recurring knee injury that just kept him out for such long periods of time. It's a real shame because Ledley King, an icon of the club, an ambassador for the club now in retirement, a nice guy, and just a phenomenal talent at his best. You know, alongside him's really difficult. You know, there are a lot of players that we could have gone for. Toby Alderweireld, Christian Romero. You have a lot of good centre-backs that have played at Tottenham over the years, but I have gone for Jan Vertonghen for a couple of reasons. Obviously, we love that left-sided centre-back now under Ange Postecoglou's system, and Mickey van der Ven reminds me a little bit of Vertonghen in the way that he plays and the way that he gallops and charges forward. I think Vertonghen was so good at doing that. He made over 300 appearances for Tottenham. His partnership with Toby was just probably the best in the Premier League at that time. A phenomenal defence alongside Walker at right back. And yeah, I think for me to have that bit of balance alongside King and to have a left-footed centre-back in there as well, Jan Vertonghen gets that spot. At left-back, it is the one and only Danny Rose. I've seen other people start combined 11s out there, including Benoit Asuakoto, who is a bit of an icon at the club, but I don't think more than Danny Rose from that iconic goal against Arsenal on his debut, that incredible volley to suiting up for Tottenham in the Champions League final. He was there. He was an incredible left back. He was probably the epitome and the definition of what a modern fullback looks like, just charging forward, delivering crosses, shots, getting into the box, being so attacking. I think a lot of fullbacks are like that now, and perhaps Danny Rose sort of set the mould for that type of player to develop in the modern era. For me, he has to be in there. I know things soured perhaps a little bit towards the end of his time at the club, but for me, in terms of his playing ability and what he did for Tottenham over the years, he completes our defence. I've gone for a midfield 2 here, so of course there are going to be players that are missing out, but I think it is only fair that Luka Modric gets a shout out for that first place in central midfield. Arguably the greatest central midfielder of the modern era with what he's gone on to do at Real Madrid, and that final season at Tottenham before he got his move to Spain was just some of the best technical football I think I've seen in 26 years of watching football. He was one of my favourite players at the time. Everything started at Tottenham for Luka Modric. I remember that screamer against Bolton that he scored. His passing and technical abilities were second to none. I still don't think there's anyone out there that can perhaps match his ability, apart from maybe someone like Kevin De Bruyne or Toni Kroos. Just an amazing player. Again, someone that deserved so much more at Tottenham. But, he went on to Real Madrid, won an incredible amount of silverware, but he definitely gets a spot in central midfield for me. Partnering him is maybe a bit of a surprise to some people, but I have gone for Moussa Dembele. It does mean that the likes of Christian Eriksen and Rafael van der Vaart do miss out, but hear me out, I just want a bit of balance in that midfield, and while Luka Modric is perhaps better at going forward a bit more, Moussa Dembele will control that midfield area better than anyone on the planet in his prime. I'm not saying that every single season he had for Tottenham was perfect, and perhaps it was only the last 3 years of his time at the club where he was truly, truly great. But when he was great, no one could get near him. We've all seen the players talking about how good Moussa Dembele is. I think Kieran Trippier said that if we'd kept hold of him for the Champions League final, it would have been a completely different outcome. And I 100% agree. If he'd have been in that central midfield, it would have been incredible. It would have been so much better. And it's a real shame that he didn't stick around for that. But in terms of keeping hold of the ball, batting off opposition, riding challenges, there was no one better in the Premier League and probably no one better in Tottenham's history. So for me, Moussa Dembele has to go in alongside Luka Modric in central midfield. On the left, we are going for the legendary Gareth Bale, of course. Who else? Sorry, Heung-min Son, but you are going to be missing out on this one. Gareth Bale is my favourite player of all time. He had electric pace, power, precision, scored screamer after screamer for Tottenham, and he is arguably the greatest British player of all time. What a player, man. And when he came back to Tottenham on loan, I've never felt joy like it, because just to see him line up for the club again, albeit during the COVID era, so there weren't really any fans to welcome him back, just a phenomenal talent. I got probably the most upset I've ever been on the day that he confirmed his transfer to Real Madrid. It was a heartbreaking moment for me. I will never ever forget that night at the San Siro. I will never forget some of the screamers he scored against me. The West Ham one, the last one before he left, just carried us to a top 4 finish that season. Hell of a player, and he will do well. A player will do well to surpass what he was able to do in a Tottenham shirt. On the right, we have gone with someone with a bit of flair, a bit of pizzazz. We have gone for David Ginola. One of the earlier players who played for Tottenham in the Premier League, but I don't think he really needs any introduction to fans of the club. He only spent 3 seasons at Spurs, but those 3 seasons were magnificent to watch him. Again, it was someone that played in not such a great Spurs team, but he was a PFA Player of the Year winner during his time here. He scored some fantastic goals and he stood out like a sore thumb with how good he was. So for me, complete in that midfield area, alongside Bale, Modric and Dembele, we have got the great David Ginola. I've gone for a 2 up top because Spurs have just been blessed with so many good strikers over the Premier League era. Of course, we know that Harry Kane is going to be included in this starting 11, so we chuck him in. Tottenham's all-time leading goal scorer, overtaking Jimmy Greaves, deserved so much more at the club for what he contributed, deserved silverware, deserved trophies. we weren't able to provide for him, but he probably is the best finisher we've seen in the Premier League. And I just really, really hope that one day, before he retires, he comes back and he breaks Alan Shearer's record and becomes the Premier League's all-time top goal scorer. He deserves it, but he also deserves trophies. So sitting here over a year on from him leaving Tottenham, I think it's completely respectable, the decision that he made. And I still love to watch the bloke when I can. And yeah, provided so many good memories in a Tottenham shirt and gave so much of his career to the club. An absolute icon. And rounding off our starting 11, we have gone with Teddy Sheringham. Look, I'm sorry. I know a lot of you may not agree with this. A lot of you would perhaps say maybe Jurgen Klinsmann should go in there. Jermaine Defoe deserves a shout out. Robbie Keane, Dimitar Berbatov. So many good strikers. But I think to partner Harry Kane, Teddy Sheringham would have been the perfect player. I would have no problems at all if you wanted to swap him out for Klinsmann as more of a striker and a goal scorer. But Teddy Sheringham, I know he probably played the best years of his career perhaps at Manchester United, but blimey, he was something to watch at Tottenham in both spells that he was at the club. Just a real leader, and he had a real sort of aura around him and a sense of invulnerability and invincibility every time he was on the ball. He could just do things on the pitch that nobody else could. And for me, that's why he gets the final place in this starting 11. So that's it. That is my Tottenham combined 11 for the Premier League era. What do you think of it? There are some supremely talented players in there. And look, there might be some players from the earlier years in the Premier League you feel deserve a spot in this team. And if they do, let me know down in the comments. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Having watched Tottenham over the years and seeing these players live and on the TV and growing up with them, I think that starting 11 is just incredible. And can you imagine if they all played together on the same pitch at the same time? It just shows that over the years we have been blessed with a lot of talent, and it's perhaps shameful that we haven't been able to reward many of these players with silverware. Hopefully with the current crop that changes, and there will be some new legends in the making when we do eventually get over the line in one of these competitions. But that's it for this video. Again, let me know what you think of my starting 11 for the Premier League era. Let me know what yours is. Are there any players I've missed out or any players you want to talk about? Get down in the comments and let me know. Don't forget to like the video if you enjoyed this. Subscribe to the channel as well if you are new around here. Enjoy the rest of your weekend. Enjoy your week. And as always, come on you Spurs.